Our message to the drug traffickers is get the hell out of our country. Your free ride is over because President Trump is back in the Oval Office.
President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice.
A powerful strike against one of the most powerful drug cartels in the world.
5,000 arrests, over $200 million in fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, and weapons seized, stretching from Chicago to 21 major cities. The largest federal strike against the Sinaloa and CJNG cartels in modern history. But the real shock wasn't the drugs. It was who was in the handcuffs. Not just traffickers, but sheriffs, border inspectors, even federal officers. The very people sworn to protect America were helping poison it. If you want to see how deep Chicago's war truly goes, hit like now. And stay with me, because what's coming next is what every American needs to hear.
Trump officials not backing down.
ICE is doing their job, and they're not going to stop doing their job.
At 4 a.m., while the cities were still asleep, the convoys were already in motion. In Chicago and in 21 other metropolitan zones, thousands of agents from the DEA, FBI, and HSY deployed at once in a synchronized strike they called the Surge. This was the largest offensive against organized crime in decades, aimed directly at the Sinaloa Cartel and CJNG. And within months, more than 5,000 suspects were in custody. Drug labs were shut down, hidden warehouses dismantled, cash drop houses raided, encrypted financial hubs seized. Chicago, America's logistics crossroads, had become the central artery for fentanyl and meth flooding across the nation.
All the drugs come through here, stockpiled, then they're shipped all over the U.S., and then the money comes back and is stockpiled and then they're shipped down.
But as the arrests mounted, something colder surfaced, because some of the people in handcuffs were not cartel soldiers. They were county sheriffs, border inspectors, federal officers, men and women sworn to protect the country. They sold their badges, and in that moment, the war changed. The threat was no longer outside. It was inside. So the question remains, who protects the public when the protectors join the enemy? If you think the badge should mean honor, comment honor below. Let's see how many still believe.
The fentanyl crisis plaguing communities and destroying lives from coast to coast. Over the past few weeks, we've looked into why the death toll is escalating and the root causes of this nationwide problem. Tonight, we examine how exactly fentanyl is actually getting into communities.
Sinaloa and CJNG no longer operate like street gangs. They function like multinational corporations, supply chains, accountants, chemists, logistics managers, and armed enforcement units that act as private police. Their product isn't merely contraband. It is industrial-scale poisoning, and the heart of that empire is Chicago. From rail yards and interstate corridors to cargo airports, massive shipments arrive and are broken down into smaller loads that fan out to Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York. The entire East Coast. The commodity is fentanyl, a chemical so potent that 2 milligrams can stop a human heart. The human cost is staggering. More than 100,000 overdose deaths a year. Nearly 70% are tied to fentanyl. In Ohio, morgues are running out of space. High schools in Indiana and Pennsylvania now store Narcan beside fire extinguishers. The supply chain has grown industrial and anonymous. Chemicals from China and India, labeled as industrial solvents, arrive at superlabs in Mexico. One lab can cook millions of lethal doses in a week. Finished product is smuggled north, hidden in farm trucks, cargo containers, and increasingly within migrant flows. But power doesn't stop at production. It lives in finance. Cash collected in Chicago and Miami funnels through shell companies. It flows into offshore cryptocurrency exchanges, is laundered, and returns as legitimate investment. Real estate, trucking fleets, nightclubs, car dealerships, political donations. This is no longer a mere crime. It is an economy, a shadow economy built on American deaths. Pause for 1 second. If you believe this cannot continue, share this video. Someone out there needs to wake up. The intelligence picture had taken months to assemble, and the quiet, relentless logistics analysis at DEA headquarters. Piece by piece, the truth revealed itself. The cartels were operating the same infrastructure in more than 20 U.S. cities. Identical stash houses, identical shell corporations, identical cash smuggling patterns, money, guns, and fentanyl pills circulating like components in a machine. By late 2025, the data was no longer a suspicion. It was a blueprint, and federal agents prepared for something America had never attempted before: a synchronized nationwide strike. They called it the Surge. Phase 1 began at 4 a.m., October 15th. helicopters cut through the quiet suburban air over Phoenix, Arizona. The first breach charge shattered the quiet. Garage doors buckled, flashbangs ignited. Teams in black fatigues breached homes that had doubled as pill mills, pressing millions of counterfeit oxycodone tablets, each one laced with enough fentanyl to kill. In 1 week, 2,500 suspects linked to Sinaloa were in custody. Agents seized $85 million, multiple pill presses, encrypted ledgers, and industrial-level storage drums containing synthetic precursors. But the war was only half fought. Phase 2 came 3 weeks later against CJNG, the cartel known for expansion through brute force and terror. This time, the battlefield widened. At the port of Long Beach, cargo cranes stood still as federal teams swarmed container ships labeled industrial cleaning supplies. Behind false steel walls were thousands of kilograms of precursor chemicals, the lifeblood of fentanyl production. In Miami, agents raided waterfront properties linked to shadow real estate networks. Homes, condos, strip malls, purchased not with cash, but through cyclical cryptocurrency wash operations that had quietly funneled blood money back into the American economy. Meanwhile, in Houston, a convoy of tractor trailers was intercepted on Interstate 10. Beneath crates of lettuce and onions were hundreds of military-grade firearms, AR platforms, 50 cal rifles, and conversion kits, all earmarked for cartel enforcers. This was not a drug operation anymore. It was a war supply chain. But the true scale of the surge emerged in the unified strike across 22 federal field divisions. In Boston, 85 CJNG affiliates were arrested. In Kansas City, 41 local distributors were taken into custody. In New Jersey and Maryland, East Coast pipelines collapsed overnight. There were no safe markets, no isolated corners, no place to hide. When the dust settled, the numbers spoke for themselves. Over 5,000 arrests, more than $200 million in drugs, weapons, and assets seized. Dozens of command nodes dismantled, multiple cartel supply lines severed. And yet, beneath the celebration, there was a silence no one wanted to break, because the agents knew the next battle would not be fought on the streets. It would be fought inside the system itself. The war was no longer just against the cartels, it was against the corruption that had been protecting them. Type war in the comments if you think America must treat the cartels as enemies, not criminals. While the visible victory of the surge dominated headlines, images of handcuffs, battering rams, and seized narcotics circulating across every major network, another battle was being waged in silence. It was not fought in warehouses or on desert highways. It was fought in bank ledgers, wire transfers, shell corporations, and offshore exchanges. A war without gunfire, a war of numbers, a war of influence, because the true strength of the Sinaloa cartel and CJNG was never just in soldiers, weapons, or smuggling routes. It was in their ability to buy silence, to purchase loyalty, to quietly infiltrate the very institutions meant to destroy them. This financial shadow network revealed how criminal syndicates were able to undermine the American justice system from the inside out. The money trail formed a pattern so precise it felt surgical. Cash collected from street-level trafficking in Chicago and Houston was funneled through front companies in Miami, disguised as consulting fees, trucking invoices, or sanitation contracts. From there, the funds were routed through layered cryptocurrency exchanges overseas, washed clean through digital anonymity, before re-entering the United States as legitimate capital. Once clean, this capital re-entered the system as legitimate investment, flowing into local real estate deals, high-value asset imports, and most critically, into the political and law enforcement apparatus. Bribes no longer looked like cash in an envelope. They looked like lucrative municipal contracts, campaign donations, and property deals, a sophisticated method of establishing systemic influence. Federal prosecutors uncovered transactions where the same accounts funding cartel gun shipments also paid local contractors, city council donors, and even police union suppliers. For the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, this was the breaking point. The corruption was not hypothetical, it was embedded, systemic, and intentional. The cases told the story with brutal clarity. In El Paso, a Customs and Border Protection officer was charged with waving through trucks carrying both narcotics and undocumented migrants, using his federal badge as a shield for years. In Arizona, an internal affairs investigation revealed supervisors who ignored credible warnings about a colleague accepting cartel money, burying trafficking cases to protect donors tied to cartel-linked shell firms. This was not a coincidence, it was infrastructure, and the root cause could be traced to a single pressure point: institutional fatigue. After emergency directives to secure the border, Homeland Security hired thousands of new agents in less than a year. Background checks were shortened, Temporary clearances became standard. Local departments drowning in narcotics violence accepted federal funding with minimal oversight. More personnel, more money, more pressure, less accountability. Since 2024, data has revealed a frightening trajectory. Dozens of officers, from county sheriffs to senior border agents, charged with cartel-related crimes. The cartels had evolved. They stopped bribing individuals. They began feeding the bureaucracy itself. For the DEA and the Pentagon, the question changed. The war was no longer simply, how do we stop the cartels? The new question was darker. How do you save the shield when the cracks are coming from inside the shield itself? If you're still here, you're paying attention. Tap subscribe, because the next part is where everything changes. The scale of the threat, amplified by the evidence of internal corruption, demanded an unprecedented policy shift. Recognizing that the cartels were no longer mere criminal gangs but sophisticated terroristic organizations, the administration executed an executive order officially classifying the Sinaloa and CJNG cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. This single declaration changed everything behind the scenes. Minutes after the order was signed, the Pentagon gained new aggressive latitude to operate alongside the DEA and Homeland Security. Defense Secretary Pete Hecht called it a whole-of-government counter-terror campaign. Their message to the cartels was stark and uncompromising. If the cartels are going to operate like insurgents, we will treat you accordingly. We will find you. We will map your networks. We will hunt you down and we will kill you. This authorized the U.S. Northern Command to provide intelligence, surveillance, and even limited operational support to law enforcement task forces for the very first time. Drug enforcement stopped being about policing. It became a war plan. The goal shifted from simply degrading or arresting individuals to defeating and destroying these organizations to defend the homeland. This new posture enabled the synchronized national strikes across 22 divisions and 7 foreign regions, the very operation we've detailed as the Surge. America's war on the cartels was now an official counter-terror policy, and the global target list had expanded exponentially. Yet, even amidst the military precision and the triumphant tally of 5,000 arrests, profound challenges remain. The victory was costly, exposing the alarming extent of institutional fatigue, a system stretched too thin by rapid expansion, facing an enemy capable of exploiting bureaucratic weaknesses. Over 150 Americans still die every single day from overdoses related to fentanyl and synthetic opioids. The product is simply too cheap and too easy to manufacture, creating an endless supply loop. The financial war, though essential, continues quietly. The cartels' deep ties to cryptocurrency exchanges and shadow banking ensure they can rebuild their capital base quickly. But the most corrosive threat remains internal. After 5,000 arrests and dozens of law enforcement officers indicted for high treason, faith in the badge has been severely damaged. The ultimate question that hangs over Washington's celebratory claims is this: what happens when the real battlefield is inside the very agencies sworn to defend the nation? When the line between justice and survival disappears, and the system starts cracking from within, who holds the shield now? The Surge was a necessary and historic strike, but it was just the beginning of a prolonged, dangerous, and increasingly complex war. The Surge was not just a coordinated law enforcement action. It was a reminder that when the safety of the American people is threatened, this nation does not hesitate. It does not retreat. It does not bow to fear. For decades, the cartels believed they could operate in darkness, poisoning communities, corrupting institutions, turning neighborhoods into battlegrounds, and treating American lives as expendable. They built networks of money, violence, deception, and power. And for a time, the world believed they could not be stopped. But the Surge proved something different. It proved that the United States is still capable of unity in the face of danger. It proved that men and women wearing the badge, not all but many, still carry a code of honor that is not for sale. And it proved that when federal agents, analysts, prosecutors, soldiers, and intelligence officers move with one purpose, the ground shakes. This was not only about arrests. It was about reclaiming a nation's dignity, about drawing a line that cannot be crossed. The lesson is clear. Evil does not need permission to grow. It only requires good people to look away. And in this moment, good people did not look away. The DEA, the FBI, Homeland Security, U.S. Northern Command, local task forces, they stood in the doorway between order and collapse, and they chose to fight. So now we ask you, the viewer, the citizen, the witness, do we continue this fight? Do we demand stronger borders, stronger accountability, and stronger protection for our communities? Do we stand with the agents who put their lives on the line, or do we allow the system to fracture from within? Your voice matters. If you believe America must keep fighting this war, tap like. Believe corruption must fall? Comment expose.